Hello, hello. We are here talking about the third Mega introduced for Pokemon Legends ZA coming out later this fall. Mega Hawlucha is being introduced, and this is quite an interesting one. Just the second 6th generation Pokemon to get a Mega Evolution after Mega Diancie. Hawlucha is already a very strong Pokemon as base, so it getting a Mega Evolution is very fascinating. On top of that, its playstyle is heavily dependent on its item, so not being able to have an item or being forced to hold Mega Stone completely changes how Hawlucha might have to play. This Pokemon has an interesting new design with a more bulky appeal. Looks like it could be very strong. Looks like it's going to be an interesting theory crafting episode because I don't know if we're going to be looking at it being fast, strong, or any combination of those things. And so it's going to be interesting. Starting off, looking at base Hawlucha is a pretty strong Pokemon, typically coming in at about 13 to 15 points in standard Nat Dex draft. I tend to skew higher than that on my league because I think Hawlucha is kind of hard to prep against and is pretty oppressive in the matchups it comes, especially if it is paired with other teammates to help set it up like terrain setters. Hawlucha has a fighting flying stab coverage which is quite strong, only shared with Zapdos, Galar, and Flamigo, where flying is already a very strong offensive typing and fighting is a great additional pairing to it, allowing it to hit the only two types that really resist it with rock and steel. Hits them super effective, and then of course electric, which you hit neutrally with fighting, which is quite good. And there also aren't that many bulky electric types. Hawlucha is coming in with the abilities Limber, Unburden, and Mold Breaker, and while Mold Breaker is a quite strong ability, Unburden is really where you see the shine on Hawlucha. And we'll go more into that throughout this video, but looking at the base stats on Hawlucha, 78 HP, 92 attack, 75 defense, 74 special attack, 63 SPDF, and 118 speed. You know, looking on Hawlucha for this video, I was like, dang, this guy's base stats are kind of bad. 92 attack really isn't that strong. But with that combination of Unburden and 118 speed is obviously a great speed tier and is likely to get better with Mega Evolution. Comes in with terrain, usually getting it some type of defense boost. You position Hawlucha well where it's not getting O-code. You then activate your Seed, which activates your Unburden, which doubles your speed, and you get a free turn to click Sword Stance if you're positioned well. And all of a sudden you're playing Hawlucha, which is now effectively at like base 170 attack with that basically 200 base speed. So Hawlucha can really be a nightmare. We're looking at its coverage. It has pretty strong coverage. Obviously it stabs, CC, dual wing beat, brave bird, acrobatics is usually huge, but probably won't be relevant on Mega Hawlucha. And then it has other good coverage, U-turn for pivoting, poison jab for fairy types, thunder punch, fire punch, ice punch, obviously great. And then its signature move, flying press, which generally you don't see a ton of, but is worth mentioning. And then as far as the status moves go, sword stance is usually extremely relevant. Bulk up is pretty relevant, could be more relevant on the Mega. Defog for removal, encore, and Roost could be interesting as well, worth noting definitely. Those are some strong status options, especially if we end up getting a bulkier variant like it's kind of feeling like. So looking at some comparisons of other Mega Pokemon as we like to do, it's quite odd company for Mega Hawlucha. I kind of chose Lopunny and Gallade because they're the fast fighting types, which are kind of similar to Hawlucha. I chose Pinsir because once again kind of fast, physically strong, a little physically bulky, and then Metagross kind of similar. Lopunny, it's interesting, you look at this right side, these Mega Pokemon are all quite strong. I think Mega Hawlucha is in some pretty safe territory to at least be a 15-point Pokemon at the bare minimum, in my opinion. And obviously, these base Pokemon are coming on the left. You're seeing they're coming from basically nowhere. Lopunny is awful, and then with Mega, it's like a first-round caliber Pokemon in Draft League. Same thing goes for Gallade, where it's a nice mid-tier, a nice Terra Captain. But with Mega, all of a sudden, that 110 speed is nothing to be playing about. And then Pinsir is not insane, but of course it's got that bug typing. Aerialade's strong, 155 attack, but 105 speed doesn't quite get it over those humps it needs to be at. And then Metagross I put here just because of the big increase in attack and defense primarily, which is where I think we'll find Mega Hawlucha landing, is a very similar stat upgrade of a little bit of attack, a good amount in defense, a little bit in everything else. Probably not as much speed investment as Metagross got, but you see what I'm talking about. Looking at the stat ranges for Mega Hawlucha, obviously the HP is going to stay the same. I see the attack going up by no fewer than 10 points and could go up all the way to around 150. Be a little shocked if it got that high. Same thing with defense. I wouldn't be shocked if it stayed the same, but maybe if they are kind of side-eye and throwing us in a different direction. But I could see it going up quite a lot, like quite a lot. Special attack, I mean, they like to throw 10 or 20 special attack on some of these guys sometimes. You never know. And then special defense, obviously, could be seeing that going up. And then speed, really going to be interesting to see if they make it faster, slower, keep it the same. I think this is the most unpredictable part about Mega Hawlucha at this point. Based on the trailer we saw, I mean, you can see the Zine here on the right. This guy's beefed up quite a bit. He could actually end up being slower than normal Hawlucha. I mean, if you ask me which one's winning in a race, I'd tell you it's normal Hawlucha off rip. So definitely could be lowered in speed, but it is a Mega Pokemon, so I would not be shocked if they just throw it 10 or 20 speed just because. And definitely when I heard it was Mega Hawlucha, or was being speculated earlier this week, I thought they were going to go more of the glass cannon route and dump it half into attack, half into speed, make this thing 140 attack, 140 speed, and this thing would be a nightmare to deal with. But I really like the direction this one's going instead, and while I'm not the biggest fan of Hawlucha, this Mega Hawlucha has some potential to be kind of interesting. Hopefully, if it's not quite as oppressive as normal Hawlucha in the setup sweeping department. So now we can look at kind of some of the ability speculation. Obviously, we're just going to keep Mold Breaker and Limber here. I think a lot of Megas sometimes just keep their standard abilities, and these are both pretty inoffensive standard abilities. Mold Breaker could make plenty of sense. I think it's very, very unlikely to keep Unburden, as it is useless with a Mega Stone, so I don't even think that's worth considering. And then I've got Aerialate here, just an ability they've given to Mega Salamence, Mega Pinsir before that makes it a little stronger, gives it stronger flying options. Reckless, I think, is fascinating, interestingly idea. You could then be running High Jump Kick Brave Bird sets on Hawlucha, and that would be really, really strong. Tough Claw is another one of those abilities they like to give to Mega Pokemon. Aerodactyl and Metagross, off the top of my head, would be very strong on Hawlucha. And then Stamina, as we kind of look at these quotes here on the right, bulked up by Mega Evolution. It sounds like they're saying that Hawlucha is going to be a little more bulky. If so, maybe it's Stamina, the Archaludon ability, the Mudbray, Mudsdale ability. Could be quite interesting in seeing how this Pokemon changes if that's the case. And then of course I've got this other quote here on the right, learn more about the wrestling Pokemon and how it spreads its wings. I think that's just going to be my confirmation that this thing is staying as fighting flying type. I think there's really nothing more to think about that. And then with the image here, this is Machamp hitting him with that karate chop on that shoulder. He tanks that pretty easily. There was a Twitter post where they said that Mega Hawlucha waits for attacks and gets attacked and then flinches its opponents in retaliation. So we've talked about Serene Grace a little, but I think that's pretty out of the question. But it does give more credentials to the ability that Hawlucha is going to be slower, one, and bulkier, two. So definitely things to keep an eye on and things to think about as we look forward to Mega Hawlucha. Starting with our first theory craft of it, we've got the well-rounded version. I mean, you just got to always throw one of these in here. We're going up 30 by attack, up 30 by defense, 10 in special attack, because why not? They gave 10 to Pinsir, they gave 10 to Gallade, I think, 10 to Metagross, like, you know, who cares? And then 20 in Spadef, and then 10 in speed. I think this is just pretty inoffensive, giving stat buffs across the board. And then it makes Hawlucha look pretty strong with that 122 attack, 128 speed, of course, losing out on Unburden. I just gave him Mold Breaker here for the sake of being kind of standard. I think this is somewhat likely, but I think there are some slightly more likely options. I think it's a little more likely to be bulky than this, but this Pokemon would be pretty strong. 128 speed is a very good speed tier. 122 is not weak by any means, especially with that coverage and those great stabs that Hawlucha has. And then that bulk is really nothing to play about. You know, it's not fantastic, but 78, 105 on the physical side. If this thing's running bulk up with that speed, it's like guaranteed to get it off. That would be pretty strong. I think this thing would come in no less than 17 points with this stat spread. Looking at our second concept, we've got the more bulky version. I think this one's slightly more likely. We're taking away 10 speed from this one, and then we're putting 30 in Spadef, 50 in defense, and then the other 30, because of the minus 10, into attack, giving it 122 attack, 108 speed, pretty good already, and then 93 defense, 125 defense. This thing would be pretty nice with bulk up sets. This would make defense higher than attack, which would be kind of interesting. But bulk up, Roost, Encore, all super viable on this. This would make it kind of interesting removal. It's a flying type that is not weak to rocks, even because of that fighting type, which is really good, and really good for Mega Pokemon specifically that can't hold heavy duty boots. This is kind of interesting as a removal if you make it bulky enough. And then with pivoting, this thing's pretty strong. I'd hate to be playing against this. I'm interested to see how this one comes in a draft league for sure. Give it stamina as well, which would only make this thing crazier. I'm not 100% sure if it gets body press, but if it does, that would be an even more interesting option. So now we're looking at what I think is the most unrealistic expectation, but I kind of thought was the most likely one just a couple days ago, where this is the glass cannon build where we're just dumping 50 into attack, 20 into speed, and then 10 in defenses, and then 10 in special attack. Because that's just kind of what Hawlucha is like more glass cannon build off the rip. That's just what Hawlucha does, and then just if they wanted to play more into that with Mega Hawlucha, but based on the design, I think this one is really, really not likely based on all of the text they've shown us. I think they're really sticking away from the glass cannon archetype, but I thought it's worth mentioning because this is kind of more like what Mega Lopunny does, which I think was the most viable comparison before we saw the Mega today. And then our last theory craft, our last concept 4, is just a more physically inclined Mega Hawlucha, where we're adding 20 to SPDF and nothing to speed, nothing to special attack, and then adding a good 40 to defense and a good 40 to physical defense. So just those 3 stats, making it more physically inclined, not making it super specially bulky, but just enough to like, yeah, it's a Mega Evolution, you give it a bone. And then leaving it at 118 speed is still extremely good, and then 130 to attack, 115 defense. This thing would be pretty crazy, kind of similar to what I was saying with that bulky set, where it's a solid removal option, it's good pivoting, it's got good setup, you just have to SD once, and 118 speed is basically enough most of the time. So Mega Hawlucha can be really, really strong, especially if it got Reckless to boost those Brave Birds because it's not running Acrobatics anymore. I'm pretty scared of what Mega Hawlucha can be. I think there's a good chance, unless the rest of the power creep is good enough to keep this thing viable, I think it's pretty likely that Mega Hawlucha could be banned or be a pretty high tier Pokemon, looking at about that 18-19 point. Yeah, I mean, banned is hard to say for a Pokemon that doesn't really have crazy base stats, but the mix of utility this thing is going to have, as well as the mix of strength, setup, coverage, it really has basically everything you're looking for in that fighting type, in that flying type. It has that removal. It has decent enough roll compression for a Mega Pokemon especially. It's not going to be weak by any means, so I think Mega Lucha could be very, very strong in Draft League. I'm very excited to see what it looks like later this year. Please let me know what your thoughts are on all of these concepts. Which one was your favorite? Which one do you think is most likely? What did I completely err on? Any abilities that I didn't think of? Please let me know, and yeah, stick around for these Mega speculations in the coming weeks. I think we're expecting to get one a week, which will be very, very fun. Expect a video right after every single one of them. So thank you for tuning in for Mega Hawlucha, and I'll see you next time.